On the way to take the college entrance exam, I was suddenly pushed into a river by someone and ended up missing the test. Because of the cold I caught, I later developed fertility problems. I was the one who brought up breaking off the engagement with my fiancé, Evan, who was about to head off to college, but Evan refused to agree. Before leaving for school, he insisted on marrying me. After we got married, I took care of his parents and saved money so he could continue his education. Life was difficult, but I accepted it willingly. I thought I was doing it for love. But when I went to see him under the pretense of delivering money, I discovered that he was living with my best friend, Sophie. The two of them looked just like a loving married couple. When I confronted them, Sophie burst into tears, acting all hurt and innocent. Evan stood protectively in front of her, clearly annoyed with me, and said, "Yeah, it was my fault that I hired someone to push you into the water back then just so Sophie could get into college. But I already married you, didn't I? You've got yourself a husband with a college degree. Isn't that good enough?" The shocking truth hit me so hard I had a heart attack. Evan hesitated for a moment, but Sophie simply grabbed his hand and dragged him away, leaving me to die alone. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day before the college entrance exam. This time, I handed the clothes Evan gave me to Sophie. "These are a bit big on me. You can wear them tomorrow to the exam," I told her. Sophie looked genuinely touched. "Emma, I really hope you don't take the exam," she said with concern. "Even though you're the one most likely to get into college, you and Evan are already planning to get married. Between college and marriage, obviously marriage is more important. What's the point of a woman going to college, anyway? If I had a man like Evan, I definitely wouldn't take the exam." Sophie put on her usual act of trying to be the kind and thoughtful best friend, giving me advice like she always did. Ever since college entrance exams were reinstated and the three of us, me, Sophie, and Evan, signed up together, she'd been saying things like this almost every day. Back then, I only thought she was narrow-minded and truly meant well, but right now, I was more furious than I had ever been because I realized I had been reborn. Reborn into the day before the college entrance exam. Tomorrow, if nothing changed, I would wear the new clothes Evan gave me, head to the test site, and be pushed into the river by someone wearing a hat. I would miss one of the exams, lose my chance at college, and get an infection that would cost me my fertility. Without my competition, Sophie and Evan both got into college successfully. I didn't want to hold Evan back, so I took the initiative to end the engagement, but he not only refused but rushed to marry me. I was touched. I spent all my savings to support him through school and stayed home to care for his parents. Since I couldn't have children, his parents constantly looked down on me. I could barely keep my place in that house by constantly providing financial support. I told myself that once Evan graduated and had a stable job, I'd save up and take the college entrance exam myself. But I never expected it was all a lie. The one who arranged for me to be pushed into the river was Evan. He did it on purpose, just to give Sophie a better chance at college. Thinking about the despair I felt before dying, the pain of being betrayed by the man I loved and the best friend I trusted, I wanted nothing more than to strangle Sophie right then and there. Sensing that my expression had soured, Sophie rolled her eyes and said, "Emma, I'm doing this for your own good. Look how much Evan cares about you. He's been skipping meals, trading food stamps just to buy you new clothes for the exam. He's such a great guy. What more could you want?" I lowered my eyes and let out a soft, mocking laugh, without saying a word. That single laugh was enough to enrage Sophie. "You bet. What's that supposed to mean? I'm doing all this for your sake, and that's how you treat me? You owe me an apology. If you don't apologize, I won't forgive you." That didn't surprise me one bit. Sophie's family wasn't well off, and she had a younger brother to support, so she was always finding ways to squeeze little benefits out of me. But I had calmed down and thought things through. The accident that happened on the way to the test must have been orchestrated by Evan himself. Sophie probably didn't know about it. Not yet. If she did, she wouldn't be so tirelessly trying to persuade me not to take the exam. So I sighed and said, "Sophie, you misunderstood me. I'm just feeling a little overwhelmed by everything with the college exam. After all, everyone said I was guaranteed to get into college. If I didn't pass, it would be humiliating." Sophie rolled her eyes at me. "So what? Just because you're feeling upset, you get to treat my good intentions like trash and take your little tantrum out on me?" I let my expression shift into guilt, looking helpless and ashamed. After a moment, I said softly, "Don't be mad. How about this? Take the outfit Evan gave me. It'll look much better on you anyway. Wear it to the exam tomorrow. I'm sure you'll do great." Sophie instantly changed her tone, hugging the clothes to her chest like they were treasure. "Now that's more like it." As Sophie turned to leave, still holding the outfit, I suddenly stopped her. "Wait." She frowned and snapped. "What? You giving it to me and now you want it back? Once it's in my hands, it's mine. Don't think you can take it back." I shook my head. "No, that's not it. I just wanted to tell you, don't take the path through the east end of the village tomorrow. Take the longer way around. I heard some other classmates say there's a mentally unstable guy hanging around that area. I'm worried you'll get hurt." Sophie brushed it off with a lazy shrug, muttering under her breath, "Sounds so dramatic. Since when is there a lunatic over there? You're just trying to stop me from stealing the spotlight." I pretended not to hear her and added, "Oh, and one more thing. Evan gave me that outfit, so don't tell him I passed it on to you. He'll definitely get upset with me if he finds out." Sophie gave a quick, like she was scared I'd start nagging her again, then clutched the clothes and ran off excitedly back home. The next morning arrived quickly. I put on one of the plainest outfits I owned, and even wore a hat on purpose. I took the long way to the test site, avoiding the main path. Only when I finally sat down and received my test paper did I begin to relax. I forced myself to stay calm and started answering the questions with focus. Even though I was considered the most likely to succeed on the exam, I had still felt nervous walking in, especially because I never actually took it in my past life. So I couldn't be sure how I'd perform. But now I felt relieved. I recognized almost all the questions. This time, I was going to win back the college placement that was rightfully mine. I had no idea how much time had passed when the final bell rang, signaling the end of the exam. I turned in a paper I was proud of. Feeling light and satisfied, I was about to leave the test site and head home when I saw Evan standing at the entrance, stopping classmates and villagers. "Have you seen Sophie today?" he asked. Watching Evan's worried face and how he anxiously craned his neck looking for her, I couldn't help but find it laughable. Thinking carefully, although he was my fiancé, he had never once shown this kind of concern for me. I used to think he was just bad at expressing his feelings, but now I realized it wasn't that, it was that I was never the one he cared about. He got engaged to me only because I was a wealthy orphan with no parents, someone who could boost him up and provide support. The person he truly loved had always been Sophie. In my past life, after the college entrance exam ended, he didn't look for me at all. Instead, he took Sophie straight to a state-run restaurant and used the money I secretly gave him to treat her to a celebration dinner. When he finally came to see me in the hospital, it was already the next day. The doctor had just told him I had nearly drowned, and because it happened during my period, I got an infection that made me infertile. That was the only time I saw a flicker of guilt on Evan's face. Seemed like he wanted to say something, but Sophie gently tugged his sleeve, and whatever guilt he had completely disappeared, just like that moment when I was having a heart attack, begging for my life. He stood right in front of me and locked the door. I cried and pleaded, "Please help me. I'll divorce you. I'll step aside for you, too." Evan hesitated slightly, but Sophie pulled on his sleeve again. "Don't listen to her. She's trying to trick you. Between a dead woman and an ex-wife, obviously, the dead one's better. What if she starts spreading rumors about the college exam or says, 'I slept with you,' or demands money back? What will you do then?" Evan looked at me, then looked at Sophie. In the end, he yanked his pant leg out of my grip and walked away. I knew exactly what kind of person Evan Wash would never just agree to a divorce, and he would never let Sophie take any risks. A girl's reputation was everything to him. Reputation mattered. But didn't a life matter, too? That thought made me lower my head and step aside to hide. I didn't leave the exam hall until Evan was gone, but I didn't go home either. Instead, I headed straight to the hospital. Once I got there, I asked a doctor to examine my heart. After all, I had no intention of dying from heart disease a second time. The doctor gave me a thorough checkup and then looked at me with reassurance. "Your heart is in great condition," he said. "Stop overthinking. What matters most is to get enough rest and keep your emotions stable. If you take care of yourself, your heart will last you well past 100. I smiled at his words. It seemed that the reason I died of heart failure in my past life was mostly due to overwhelming exhaustion. Back then, I pushed myself to the brink of collapse so that Evan could study without worry. After falling into the river, I never got proper treatment. I worked myself like a machine, and on top of that, the betrayal from the two people I trusted most broke me down completely. No matter how strong a heart is, it has its limits. But this time, I wouldn't let things be the same. As I stepped out of the examination room, I overheard a wave of chatter filling the hospital corridor. Did you hear? One of the test takers got pushed into the river. Almost drowned. I know, right? It was a girl. Sounds like she got into some emotional mess, and someone snapped. What a pity. This college entrance exam is supposed to change your fate. Now that she missed it, who knows what'll happen to her next? She nearly died. Forget about the exam. I knew exactly who they were talking about, Sophie. I had to pinch my thigh hard just to stop myself from laughing out loud. Pretending to be shocked, I grabbed the hand of a woman nearby. Ma'am, do you know the name of that student who got pushed into the river? I'm taking the exam, too. I might know her. The woman flinched at how sudden I was, but replied anyway. I think her name was something like Snow, maybe Sophie. I just remember it had snow in it. She's lying in a ward up ahead. If you go take a look, you'll know if you recognize her. I practically ran the rest of the way, charging into Sophie's hospital room. She was lying on the bed with her eyes closed. The room was filled with sobbing. For a second, I froze. Did Sophie die? Before I could react, Sophie's father spotted me and lunged forward, grabbing my arm. You have the nerve to show up here, he yelled. If it wasn't for you pushing her to take the college exam to change her life, how would she have ended up in the river? How would she have fallen unconscious? Her other relatives immediately jumped in, all finally having someone to blame, fingers pointed at my face, voices full of fury. This is all your fault. I found Sophie such a good match. Now look what's happened. Everyone knows she got dragged into the river by some homeless guy. Who's going to marry her now? She's just a girl. Why'd she have to be so obsessed with going to college? Serves her right. You're going to take responsibility for this. Pay up. If Sophie can't get married anymore, you'll hand over your dowry so her brother can get a wife. Yeah, you deserve this. The more they talked, the more absurd it got. I rolled my eyes. Sophie was already an adult. It was her choice to take the exam. What did that have to do with me? If you're so capable, why don't you go after the one who pushed her into the river? Why blame me? I snapped. It's just because I don't have parents, isn't it? You think I'm easy to bully? Cowards. That's all you are. And anyway, I told Sophie not to take the exam. With that brain of hers, she wasn't likely to pass anyway. She didn't listen. What do you expect me to do? As soon as I said it, I knew I'd stirred a hornet's nest. The whole room erupted with the nastiest insults imaginable. If a few of them hadn't been too scared to lay hands on me, I probably would have been ripped to pieces right then and there. I argued with them for a few minutes, but honestly, I got bored. So, I walked out of the hospital room without another word. The moment I stepped into the hallway, I saw Evan not far off, anxiously checking every room one by one. News clearly traveled fast. I wasn't sure how much he already knew, so I quickly rubbed my eyes to make it look like I had just been crying. When Evan saw me standing there perfectly fine, he clearly let out a breath of relief, but almost immediately, his face hardened and he snapped angrily. You're okay. Why didn't you get someone to let me know? Do you have any idea how worried I was? I've told you again and again to keep a low profile, but you just have to keep making enemies. If I hadn't overheard some classmates saying you were at the hospital, I'd be out of my mind by now. Evan fired off his words like a machine gun. I just stared at him blankly, pretending I didn't hear a thing. It took him a moment to notice that my face looked like I'd been crying. Maybe guilt kicked in, or maybe it was all just for show. Either way, he sighed and started to console me. All right, don't cry. I wasn't trying to blame you. I'm just worried about you. You know the saying, the deeper the love, the harsher the words. Don't you understand that? What matters is that you're okay. Missing the college entrance exam isn't the end of the world. There's always next time. Don't be so upset. But hearing that only made me cry harder. I understand everything you're saying, I choked out. But Sophie spent so much time preparing for this exam. You know what her situation is. If she doesn't get into college this time, she's going to be forced to marry someone just to get a dowry for her brother's wedding. There won't be a second chance. She's my best friend and now she's in a coma because a stranger pushed her into the river. Her whole life is ruined. How can I not be heartbroken? Evan's expression twisted like he'd swallowed a fly. He cut me off sharply and grabbed my arm. What did you say? Who did you say got pushed into the river? I looked at him, puzzled. Wow, I didn't realize you cared so much about Sophie. Weren't you always saying you didn't like hanging out with her? Evan used to avoid spending time with Sophie, just to keep up appearances. He constantly told me how annoying he found her, and like an idiot, I believed him. I even tried to push the two of them to become friends, thinking it would make them closer for my sake. Looking back now, they must have found my efforts laughable. Evan probably realized how foolish that looked in hindsight too, because his expression turned a bit awkward. Still, he said, we're all classmates. Of course, I care. Just tell me what happened to Sophie. I let out a sigh. She was on her way to the exam when a stranger shoved her into the river. She missed the whole thing. I was so nervous during my test. I completely forgot about you and her, but once I finished, I felt this pressure in my chest, so I came to the hospital. That's when I heard about Sophie. Evan stumbled backward, swaying like he was about to pass out. If I hadn't grabbed his arm, he probably would have collapsed. That reaction was worlds apart from how he acted in my past life when I was the one who almost drowned. But I wasn't done yet. I kept going, letting my voice stay soft, almost mournful. If it were just about missing the exam, maybe it wouldn't be so bad. Let's be honest, Sophie didn't really have a good chance of getting in anyway, not unless someone else dropped out. Her grades were never that strong. But the real problem is she can't swim. She nearly drowned. A homeless man happened to be walking by and rescued her. I wasn't there, but its summer people aren't wearing much. I heard that when the man pulled her out, her blouse was already undone. Now her reputation is ruined. What's she supposed to do in the future? While I kept talking, Evan suddenly shoved me aside and stormed into Sophie's hospital room. I followed behind. Of course, I couldn't miss a show like this. The moment Evan stepped through the door, Sophie's mother lunged at him and grabbed his arm. Evan, what are we going to do now? She wailed. Didn't you say you had a plan? That you were confident you could get Sophie into college? But that homeless guy is 50. Not only did he pull Sophie out of the river grime, he gave her CPR right there in public. Now everyone's saying he saved her and that Sophie should repay him with her body. Sophie's only 20. She's my only daughter. How could I possibly let her marry a homeless man? To be fair, she wasn't exaggerating. There was no way she'd ever let Sophie marry someone like that. The man was far too poor. Even though we were living in modern times, with her falling into the river, getting rescued, and even experiencing that kind of physical contact, the situation really put Sophie in a tough spot. I stood at the doorway, struggling not to laugh out loud. Evan didn't even glance at me. He looked worse and worse by the second. In the end, he dropped to one knee beside Sophie's hospital bed and grabbed her hand. Sophie, wake up. It's Nathan. Come on, wake up. Maybe love really could work miracles. After a few calls from Evan, Sophie actually woke up. She blinked slowly, looking totally lost. Why am I here? Everyone in the room froze in surprise, but I caught on quickly. Whatever had happened must have come on too suddenly, and she had a brief spell of memory loss. I rushed forward right away to help jog her memory. Sophie, you're finally awake. You scared me half to death. It's okay, if you didn't get into college, what matters is that you're alive. Your reputation, your innocence, none of that matters. Worst case, you never marry and that's fine. I'd never let you end up with that homeless man. With my gentle, patient coaxing, Sophie finally seemed to come to her senses. Then, all at once, she pointed straight at me and shouted, "It was you. You did this on purpose." I froze. How could she possibly blame me? Sophie looked like she was on the edge of a breakdown. That outfit, you gave it to me. And, before that man pushed me, he called out your name. Only after I turned around did he push me into the river. If you hadn't made enemies with someone and purposely given me your clothes, this never would have happened to me. Sophie's mom and a few of her relatives started to put the pieces together, and once again, they turned their anger on me. So, it really was your fault. I was wondering why you were being so generous. That outfit was beautiful, and you just gave it away. What did Sophie ever do to you, huh? Why would you hurt her like this? Don't you realize this could ruin her future? You're disgusting. I put on a face full of helpless frustration, struggling for words before finally speaking. How's this my fault? First of all, the clothes were brand new, nobody even knew they were mine. Second, it wasn't like I purposely gave them to her. If anything, it was more like she took them from me. Sophie nearly exploded. You're lying. I didn't argue further. I just sighed. Also, I told you yesterday not to take that path. I warned you there was someone mentally unstable hanging around there. I didn't want you to get hurt. If I'd really planned this, why would I warn you? Sophie's face darkened, but she still tried to twist the truth. There's been a mentally ill man at the village entrance for years. Everyone passes by just fine. That so-called warning of yours meant nothing. I didn't bother refuting her. I just continued calmly, and another thing called my name. Why did you respond? That doesn't make any sense. If, like you say, it was someone I offended and they were coming after me, why wouldn't they recognize me? Why would they attack someone else? And even if I didn't want you to take the exam, what would I gain from that? I've always been good to you. You know that. The room fell silent. Even though they were all unreasonable, they couldn't ignore the logic in my questions. Yeah, I had told Sophie not to take that path. And if someone called my name, why did she answer? It didn't add up. No matter how you looked at it, they might have been confused, but I knew exactly what was going on. Sophie and Evan had been involved for a long time. To take advantage of me and squeeze every bit of benefit they could, they came up with a plan to have Evan get engaged to me, and I was like a golden goose, popular wherever I went. People often called out to me in the streets, trying to get close, hoping to become friends. Sophie, afraid I'd grow distant from her, would often pretend to be me. That way she could block others from approaching me and also scope out better options for herself should someone more appealing come along. I'd known about it all along. I just trusted Sophie too much and convinced myself that everything she did was for my sake. But just like I figured it out, so did Evan. It didn't take him long to catch on to the truth. Shut up, he barked. No matter what, this is your fault. Sophie took the fall for you. If you don't feel guilty, fine, but how dare you still act so arrogant here? As your fiancé, I'm ordering you to take responsibility. Since your mistake caused Sophie to lose her chance at college, you should give her your spot, let her take your place at school. And as for you, marry that homeless guy instead of her. The second he said that, the entire Chong family lit up with glee. They couldn't stop smiling. I didn't agree, but I didn't refuse either. I simply let out a sigh. The one who really caused all this is the man who pushed Sophie into the river. Don't worry, I've already reported it to the police. They'll investigate and find out who did it. They'll be held responsible. Evan panicked. What? You called the police? Why would you do that? But it was too late. The door to the hospital room swung open and the officers walked in. Before the police could even speak, they were swarmed by the Chong family. The crowd surrounded them, all talking at once, pointing fingers straight at me. Officers, you're just in time. This girl here ruined my daughter's life, kept her from getting into college, and destroyed her reputation. Yeah, she needs to pay for what she did. Real compensation. Money. If she hadn't made enemies and given that outfit to Sophie, none of this would have happened. She should be in jail. She should hand over her college admission to Sophieites, what Sophie deserves. Evan glared at me like I'd lost my mind. Why would you call the cops? Are you crazy? Now, everyone's going to know. I let out a cold snort. If you care so much about Sophie, don't you think she deserves the truth? Evan couldn't win the argument, so he rushed over and grabbed one of the officers by the arm, pointing back at me. Officer, I'm Evan Miller. I'm also a test candidate. I can testify Han did this on purpose. She's always been jealous of Sophie, so she gave Sophie the outfit that was meant for her and deliberately made enemies with someone. That person pushed Sophie instead. It's attempted murder. You have to do something. While the crowd echoed with cries of, yeah, that's right, and she should be punished, the officers raised their hands for silence. Finally, they got a chance to speak, but instead of responding to the accusations, they turned to Evan. You're Evan Miller from Miller Village? Evan blinked, confused, but nodded. Yes. The officers looked relieved. Good. You're exactly who we're looking for. Without giving anyone time to react, they pulled out handcuffs and placed Evan under arrest. The entire room went silent. No one could believe what had just happened. Everyone had assumed I was the easy target, the one to pin everything on. No one had imagined the real culprit was someone else entirely. Evan's expression changed over and over again, but he couldn't say a word. All he could do was shoot me a venomous glare. In my previous life, when I woke up, I was immediately told that I had missed the exam and would never be able to have children. My mind went blank. I couldn't think, couldn't act. By the time I started to put the pieces together and wanted justice, it was already too late. But this time, the police didn't wait for anyone to ask. One of them stepped forward and explained, because Miss Han reported it right away, we launched an immediate investigation. We quickly found eyewitnesses. Following their leads, we tracked down the person who pushed Sophie into the river. After being interrogated, he confessed and revealed who ordered him to do it. The mastermind was Evan Miller. Sophie shook her head in disbelief. No, that's not possible. I don't believe it. I never did anything to him. Why would he hurt me? I lowered my head and said nothing. Clearly, Sophie had forgotten that the man who pushed her into the river had called out my name first, taken the hit for me. But since she wasn't going to say it, I had no reason to remind her, because this was my plan all along. I just redirected the disaster onto someone else. The officer continued patiently, explaining the full details of the witness testimonies. The Chong family finally snapped out of their shock and lunged at Evan, grabbing him by the collar and shouting that he had to take responsibility, that he was going to pay for what he'd done. If the police hadn't been there, they probably would have beaten him on the spot. You said it yourself. Evan, this counts as attempted murder, one officer said sternly. You knew Sophie couldn't swim, and you still hired someone to do this? Come with us. It's time to give a proper explanation. As the police led Evan toward the door, he suddenly dropped to his knees and grabbed my pant leg. Emma, please help me. I can't go to jail. You're so smart. You're bound to be one of the top scorers in the whole country. If you speak up for me, the officials will definitely go easy on me. Just say you won't go to college unless they release me. Someone will intervene. I'm your fiancé. You can't just abandon me. Oh, now he remembered. He was my fiancé. Where was that sentiment when he hired someone to push me into the river so Sophie would have a better shot at college? Where was it when he and Sophie used my money to play house at school? Where was it when he watched me suffer through a heart attack, locked the door, and left me to die alone? The thought of it made my blood boil. I used all the strength I had and slapped him across the face hard. Someone like you doesn't deserve to be my fiancé. You make me sick. With that, I turned and walked out of the hospital before even the police. What I didn't expect was that Evan didn't end up going to prison. Sophie's family dropped the charges.
Why?
Because just like in my previous life, Evan scored high on the college entrance exam. The Chong family knew Sophie's chances of marrying into a decent household were ruined, so they used the threat of jail to force Evan into marrying her. They held a wedding, but of course, I wasn't invited, not that I wanted to go. I heard it was a sorry-looking affair. Even though Evan's family emptied their savings to cover the costs, all that money ended up in Sophie's mother's hands. She set it aside for Sophie's younger brother for his schooling and future marriage. So barely a cent went toward the wedding or the couple's new life. Both families were angry, but didn't dare speak out, since the Chong family had Evan's life in their grip. I couldn't care less about the two of them, but I still heard plenty of gossip. People said how in love they were, how sweet their relationship was, how both sets of parents adored Sophie, but I knew it was all fake. There was no way Evan's parents truly accepted a daughter-in-law with a ruined reputation, and Evan, he didn't love someone who brought nothing but trouble. He was just trying to keep things stable until he got into college, avoid anything that might mess with his future. I didn't need to guess Sophie's hard days were only just beginning. As for me, even though I didn't end up being the national top scorer, my grades were excellent, good enough for me to choose any university I wanted. I picked my favorite school and program, packed up, and planned to head out early. But before I left for college, I invited Sophie over to my place. I had no intention of letting them off the hook that easily. Sophie looked happy, smug even. She wore an expression of superiority that couldn't have been more different from the pitiful, teary face she'd shown me in my last life. When I found out the truth, when I didn't say anything and just stared at her, she sneered. What? Staring at me like that? What? You expect me to feel guilty because you're worse than me? She glanced at my packed bags with a hint of envy in her eyes, but still held her head high. What? You call me here just to show off that you got into college? So what if you did? You still lost to me in the end. Honestly, the exam didn't even matter. We both knew I'd never pass anyway. But now I'm married to Evan. I'm the wife of a college student. He promised he'd study hard and give me a great life. As she smiled proudly, I simply sighed and said sincerely, I'm sorry. That one line completely caught her off guard. After all, she was the one who stole my fiancé, betrayed our friendship no matter how you looked at it. I was the one who deserved an apology, not her. So her face froze for a second. You're sorry for what? My expression darkened. She pressed again and again for an answer until I finally said, I'm guessing the reason you were willing to marry Evan is because he told you the truth that he meant to have someone push me into the river, but you were the one who got pushed instead, right? Sophie said nothing, but her expression confirmed that what I said was true. I sighed and continued. Actually, it wasn't because of any fight between us. After Evan gave me that outfit, I tried it on, but it was too big, not my size at all. So regardless of whether we argued that day or not, I still would have given the clothes to you. And you wore it. You know better than anyone how well it fit. That's exactly why Evan purposely picked a style and pattern he knew I wouldn't like. He knew I'd end up giving it to you. As for the man by the river shouting my name, that was all part of the setup to confuse you. And the one who originally told me not to walk through that part of the village? That was Evan. I didn't know about his plan back then. It wasn't until you two got married and they treated you so well that it all clicked into place. Sophie frowned. What are you even talking about? I didn't answer directly, but instead asked, let me guess. Evan promised to take you with him to college, didn't he? That's because he's trying to isolate you to find a way to get rid of you later. Sophie's face shifted, her expression flickering. You're insane. You're trying to stir things up. You think I'd believe that? I didn't rush. I simply looked at her with calm pity. I know you don't believe me, but I have to tell you the truth. Evan already confessed to me about you too. I wasn't angry. I trusted him to handle it. That's why on the day before the entrance exam, I was cold and short with you. What I didn't expect was that his way of handling it would be to drown you. Sophie's face turned pale, but she still shook her head. No, that's not possible. Evan's good to me. I cut her off. Good to you? Do you really think there's a man in this world who'd accept a woman who's had intimate contact with another man? A man who'd want someone dragging along a broken family? If you don't believe me, go home, sneak in. See what Evan and his parents say about you when you're not there. Then you'll understand. Sophie didn't respond. She stumbled out, shaken. I picked up my suitcase and quietly followed her. I trailed her all the way to Evan's house. It wasn't long before I heard her furious screaming from inside. Evan, you did this on purpose, didn't you? You were trying to get rid of me just because I'm not a college student. Because I'm dragging my family behind me. I should have left you in jail. Let you rot there for the rest of your life. I didn't hear Evan's voice, but I did catch the voices of his parents arguing back, quieter than Sophie's, but I still made out certain words. Not pure. Kissed another man. Always asking for money. Not as good as Emma. Not worthy of Evan. After a few moments of listening, I didn't want to get caught in the mess, so I grabbed my bag and left. Once I got to campus and settled in, I slowly started hearing updates from old classmates about what happened next. Apparently, after a massive argument, Evan and Sophie made up, but Sophie had grown more suspicious. She began eavesdropping constantly. Eventually, she overheard Evan and his parents plotting to deal with her how to quietly get rid of her while away at college. Faced with the terror of death and the heartbreak of betrayal, Sophie completely snapped. She grabbed a knife and lunged. Evan was severely injured. He died on the spot, ending his vicious life for good. Evan's parents were also wounded, though not fatally, but their injuries left them unable to care for themselves. Without a son to support them, they wouldn't have many good days ahead. Sophie, charged with premeditated murder, was arrested and sentenced to death. Not long after Sophie's execution, I received a letter from her. In it, she cursed me over and over, blaming everything on me. She even claimed she knew I was someone reborn. I quickly realized that the shock of her death sentence must have triggered memories from her previous life. At the end of the letter, she wrote with twisted pride, "When you die, you'll come back too. Last time, letting you die from a heart attack was me being merciful. But next time, I'll do things 100 times crueler than that idiot Evan. I'll make sure you and everyone you care about suffer endlessly." Reading those threats, I just laughed. A person that vile, how could they ever have the chance to be reborn? What a ridiculous fantasy. Without a second thought, I tossed the letter into the trash and went back to studying, because I knew only by continuing to grow stronger could I truly take control of my life and rewrite my fate.